everyone, in today's episode, I am going to give you a sneak peek into one of the masterclasses from my relationship revamp course. So this masterclass is called Speak to His Heart, and it's mastering communication that creates connection, polarity, and lasting attraction. So communication is probably one of the biggest physical reasons why relationships either thrive or they can slowly fall apart. Of course, there's also energetic root causes of why relationships can start to feel stale and fall apart. But today, we're going to talk about the art of feminine communication and speaking to his heart. So most couples, they don't fall out of love overnight. They slowly stop feeling understood. They stop feeling emotionally safe. They stop feeling seen. And eventually, they begin living more like business partners rather than lovers, or roommates rather than lovers. And that's why I created this masterclass. So inside this lesson, I'm not simply teaching you what to say to men. I am teaching you how to communicate and how it actually works through the nervous system, the subconscious mind, and masculine and feminine dynamics. Also emotional safety, playfulness, attraction, and polarity. And because communication, it's so much more than just words. It's also our energy, our tone, our body language, our presence, the emotional experience someone has when they're with you. And when we can understand those pieces, then communication starts to become an art. And before we begin, I also want to let you know that Relationship Revamp is officially open for pre-sale. So right now, the entire course is only $199. And I'm offering it at this price because in July, mid-July, I'm going to be adding brand new updated modules to add to the masterclass and this whole course. And you'll also get a lot of bonus trainings. So this course is going to grow and the price will also increase. So if you've been thinking about joining, this is the lowest investment that it will ever be. And the best part is that everyone who enrolls during the pre-sale, they receive lifetime access. So this means whenever you enroll, you will get every new lesson, every future masterclass, every update, every expansion, and I continue growing. I will also maybe be adding this in the future, and you'll automatically receive all future updates. I'm constantly learning. I'm always studying neuroscience, nervous system regulation, feminine embodiment, relationships, subconscious reprogram, and polarity. And so as I grow, this course is also going to grow with me. I'm going to be updating modules as I'm growing. And Relationship Revamp isn't simply about just getting a relationship. So it's about becoming the woman who naturally creates healthy, emotionally safe, deeply connected relationships because she understands herself first. And when you learn how to regulate your own nervous system, when you understand masculine and feminine energy, when you heal subconscious patterns and learn emotional intelligence, communication begins to feel effortless. And relationships begin to feel peaceful instead of exhausting. So whether you're dating, engaged, newly married, or you've been married for 20 years, this lesson is going to completely change the way you see communication. So I'm so excited to share this masterclass with you guys. So let's dive into the masterclass. Hey everyone, today in this module, I want to talk about mastering communication with men. Now, I just say with men because I kind of wanted to make this catchy, but you can really use this communication with everyone, with friends, with kids, with family members, even animals, even your pets. So it's not just for men, but it's for everyone. So I want to start with the big picture here. Most anthropologists and evolutionary psychologists agree that humans have been only using verbal communication as we know it today for about 20 to 40,000 years. While that might seem like a long time for us, in this grand scale of human evolution, it's just in blink of an eye. It takes around 40,000 years to even make a dent in our evolutionary history. So our DNA is still the same. What does this mean for us? It means that most humans are not naturally skilled at communication. Verbal communication is a relatively new tool for us. And as much as we want and expect expertise from one another, it's not something that we've fully evolved to master. When we talk about communication, we're typically thinking about verbal communication. So when I'm talking about communication, I'm talking mostly verbal communication. And verbal communication really only takes up about 7% of how we communicate. So the other 93%, that's going to be nonverbal. Things like your tone, facial expressions, gesture, and body language. It's your energy. And some experts will argue over the exact percentages. So some may say that nonverbal communication is closer to like 66% or 70%. But no matter how you slice it, the majority of communication happens without words. So then why are words going to matter so much? Because they're tied to our emotions. Words are often used as a way to release energy. For example, when someone feels anxious or angry, they may talk more just to let that energy out. So here's the fascinating difference between men and women. Studies show that women use an average of 20,000 more words a day than men do. And biologically, women have a communication advantage. So this is why men sometimes feel overwhelmed in conversations, especially during arguments. They intuitively know they'll have a disadvantage and they're probably going to lose in this. Many men even begin walking on eggshells because they feel like they're stepping into a game that they're not equipped to win. Now let's think about how this plays out. Women tend to speak in more detail, telling longer stories. We easily jump from one topic to another. We can weave in and out of conversations and tell stories on top of stories and layer our stories within other stories and keep up with one another effortlessly. We can talk over one another and we're keeping up with each other. But for men, this can feel like too much. Men tend to prefer sticking to one topic at a time, and they process conversations more linearly. So when we pile on multiple stories or switch topics quickly, it can feel very overwhelming or even frustrating for them. So here's the takeaway. If you are communicating with a man, whether it's your husband, your partner, son, or brother, or a man that you love and that's in your life, remember that he's likely to come into a conversation with the biological disadvantage in verbal communication. So it's not about intelligence or effort, but it's about how we're just wired differently. When we understand these differences, we can approach conversations with a more grace and awareness of knowing this. It's not about dumbing things down for them or talking less. It's about meeting him where he's at and creating that space for him to process what's being said. And this small shift in understanding can transform how you connect with men in your life. And understanding this becomes even more fascinating when we look at how men and women have evolved to communicate differently. So women, when we communicate, we've evolved as gatherers. Picture this, like 3 women go out gathering during the day, usually with their children. So for women, talking loudly and often is served several purposes. It served safety because speaking loudly helped keep those small animals away, and it served as connection. Talking while gathering helped them bond and build trust. So if a woman wasn't talking or sharing details, the others might feel very uneasy and think, oh, I can't trust her. She's not carrying her weight today. So this is why even today, when a woman in a group is quiet or doesn't open up, we might sometimes perceive it as she's being distant or she's untrustworthy. Maybe she doesn't trust me, or she thinks that I don't trust her. And we think that's a big problem. So jumping from topic to topic also comes naturally to women because it mirrors how we communicated while gathering. So this is a part of why women feel connected through relating and talking. Men with communication, men evolved as hunters. So imagine being out in the wild tracking prey. If you are a chatty guy, you're not risking your own life, but you're also going to get the whole group killed. Silence was critical for survival, whether it to avoid predators or rival tribes. So because of this, men became more compartmentalized in their communication. So their brains are wired to focus on one topic at a time, while women's brains, like the book, there's actually a book called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. It explains that we tend to connect everything just like spaghetti noodles. So there's our brains just work differently. They're just wired differently. And even though today things have changed, we're not hunters or gatherers anymore, but we're still wired that way because, like I said, it takes 40,000 years to even make a dent in evolution. For most of history, men and women didn't work closely together. So for example, men hunted with men, women gathered with women. Even in the evenings, men and women often had separate campfires. So they didn't sit together in their campfires. They had separate campfires. It wasn't until about 3 generations ago, roughly 75 years, that men and women started working alongside each other in significant ways. So at family gatherings, you'll even see this kind of separation. The men would sit together, maybe watching sports, while the women were in the kitchen chatting and cooking. This was what happened a lot when I was younger, and my mom would take me to her friends' houses and stuff. Like, all the men would be in the living room, chilling, like having a good time, watching a show or watching sports and drinking beer, whatever. And then the women would be in the kitchen chatting away and cooking and getting the food ready. So back then, men and women didn't spend a lot of time together. So this communication gap wasn't a problem back then as it is now today. Men and women just didn't talk to each other as much as they do now. So everything is so different today. Men and women are not only working together, but in romantic relationships, we're spending more time than ever communicating. So this means the old ways don't really work anymore. So we're going to learn about the 5 points of communication today. So communication, it's an art. It's more than just words. In this lesson, we're going to talk about 5 key points that you can focus on when communicating. So these points are like layers, and while they can overlap and combine, we'll start with understanding the first layer before diving deeper. So here are the 5 points of communication. Okay, so number 1 is the mental plane. Number 2 is the subconscious mind. Number 3 is the heart plane. Number 4 is the belly. And number 5 is the sexual communication. So let's dive into each point and just see how each one works. So the mental plane, this is where we're having that head-to-head communication. It's very logical, fact-based, and problem-solving. It's how most people are communicating with each other. So for example, when your man is at work and he's communicating with a female coworker, it's happening on a mental plane because at work, it's assumed that everyone is operating in their masculine energy, focused on tasks and goal-driven, and mental plane communication is efficient and straightforward, but it's not necessarily a heart-to-heart or a belly-to-belly communication. It's not emotional. So we're talking about householding stuff, scheduling, work. We're in the mental plane. So when we only talk in the mental plane, we tend to forget about a lot of the other needs for communication, especially in relationships. When we're in the mental plane, the purpose is to communicate and relay information or working out transactions for trade. So this is the most masculine form of communication. The biggest issue I see in many relationships, and I've fallen into this trap as well, and gosh, it took so much effort for us to kind of get out of this mental to mental communication. It's the householding trap, which is when you're married and there's a lot of everyday stuff that you have to work out. That's the partnership portion of the relationship. You need this to be good partners. It's talking about groceries, the kids, the bills, what happened at work, what's going on with family members, or, hey babe, did you do this today? Did you do that? Or remember this for next week? Hey babe, there's this going on this day, or so-and-so is sick, or, oh, did you hear about so-and-so? There's a lot of just relaying information, And what can happen when we are just having all of these mental to mental communications, not only are we not having all of these other delicious conversations, but it also puts you guys in this transaction, heavy masculine to masculine relating. And of course, it's important. We need to have this kind of communication to survive and to have a partnership. And let's add all of these other delicious types of communication that your relationship might be missing out on. Because if you're only having mental plane conversations, the romance in the relationship will be out the door so fast. And it's going to be impossible to create polarity in your relationship if you're only having these mental to mental conversations. And the longer that you're with someone, the longer that you're in a relationship, and the longer you've been married, the more that you're going to start buying things, and you're going to do a lot of those householding things together. So you need to have those mental to mental conversations, like having kids, buying houses, buying investments, having aging parents, jobs. There's so much to keep track of nowadays, and obviously we have to discuss all of it. So don't make that the only thing in your relationship. So now I want to talk about heart to heart connection. Heart to heart communication is where we're forming connections. When we connect with someone on the heart plane, not just the mental plane, in these moments, we can pair bond with one another and create this deep emotional gut level response. When people connect heart to heart, they feel truly seen and heard. So this emotional communication, a heart-to-heart connection, when you're opening up, sharing feelings, and genuinely just listening with empathy, you're engaging the heart when you're being present with one another. So of course, we don't pair bond with everyone that we have a heart-to-heart connection with. So for instance, at work during lunch, I might chat with someone listening with an open heart. We're connecting in that moment, but not necessarily pair bonding. So pair bonding is a deep emotional connection. So pair bonding is rooted in the neurobiological process involving hormones like oxytocin, which promotes that attachment and bonding. So we usually pair bond with our babies, and we can also do this with our partners. So I'm not pair bonding every time I have a heart-to-heart connection with someone and just listening with my presence. We're simply just acknowledging each other's humanity, sharing a smile, a joke, and a laugh, or agreeing on an opinion, and it's a brief moment of connection. And the best way to really connect with someone heart to heart is by giving them your full presence. And you can always use words as well. You can use simple phrases like, I hear you. So then they feel like they're being heard. So these words may seem very simple, but for some people, they may be challenging to use because some people are more direct. So often directness can trigger people, especially if there's no foundation or heart-to-heart connection. So for example, maybe I once read a book that I absolutely loved. It was called Mother Hunger, and the name itself can be very triggering. So it's about this influence of maternal relationships, and the book Mother Hunger, it explores how early maternal relationships shape our understanding of love and self-worth, and it emphasizes the importance of nurturing connections in childhood. So it really taught me the importance of being present for my children, leading me to want to be a stay-at-home mom. I realized that anyone who raises our child influences and programs their subconscious mind, especially from the ages of 1 to 5. So how they react, how they think and perceive love, and their self-worth is programmed in their subconscious even through adulthood. So that the way that they react and think and the way that they do things, that is programmed since they're born till 5 years old, and then it stays with them until they get older. So even though I didn't finish the entire book, the parts I read were just life-changing, and I knew it could help many women. So however, if I were to share this book with someone who was unresolved issues with their own mother or feels guilty about their own parenting, and we lack this heart-to-heart connection, we don't have this foundation, it could really trigger her subconscious wounds. She might perceive it as me calling her a bad mom or criticizing her own mother. So it wouldn't end well. Because when we have these wounds, these deep subconscious wounds, when someone just brings something up, that can trigger those wounds. So for a heart-to-heart connection, both parties need to have a degree of openness with each other. If one or both individuals have unresolved past traumas and lack of self awareness, forming that connection becomes more challenging. So, because a lot of times people with unresolved trauma may find it challenging to engage in an open, empathetic communication, and certain interactions can really trigger their past wounds, especially with the person who is more direct. So, it's not impossible, but it does require building and trust if you are naturally direct. So you'll need to some self-awareness to avoid triggering the other person, especially if the relationship does matter to you. If it doesn't, then of course, you can be as directive as you want to, but within a relationship, or like relationships with your children, if it matters to you, then we have to really be self-aware of that. So often our directness comes from a place of love. We desire that heart-to-heart connection, but if the past has been rocky with this person, we might accidentally trigger the other person instead of creating a genuine connection. And then you're going to have those types of friends that you can be more direct with, because you guys have that foundation with each other. You guys have had those heart-to-heart connections with each other. So yes, definitely, it's totally okay to be direct. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but you want to make sure that you have that foundation of heart-to-heart conversations and communicating with each other. So heart-to-heart communication forms connections, it creates bonds with your loved ones, and it makes people feel seen and heard. Now I want to talk about belly communication. So the belly to belly communication is a playful, lighthearted connection. So belly to belly communication is fun, it's playful, it's lighthearted. It's the kind of connection where you can joke around, tease each other, and just have a good time without anyone taking things personally. So for example, let's say you have a cousin or a friend that you can tease and they tease you back, and you both know that it's not mean-spirited, it's just a part of your playful relationship. That's a belly-to-belly connection. Men will usually have this with other men. So men often experience this with their friends. So they can talk smack with each other, clown on each other, laugh about it, and because they know it's all love. For women, it can be a little bit trickier because men might joke around things like their weight, but no one's going to take offense to it. But women, if we joke around about each other's weight, there might be a chance where we hurt each other or offend each other. So we have to be a little bit more cautious about that. It doesn't mean that women can't have a belly-to-belly connection. They're just less common. For example, I might have this kind of playful relationship with a close friend, my husband, or even my daughter. So in these relationships, we can laugh and joke around about things and even lightly bring up past triggers like, oh, remember that one time when you got mad about this? And just laugh about it. Me and my husband will do that sometimes because we've had our crazy moments back then, and we talk about it and we just kind of laugh about it and joke around about it. In many cultures, cousins and siblings often have a belly-to-belly relationship too. It's just a part of a family dynamic, that teasing, that laughing, and keeping things lighthearted. And belly-to-belly connections, they're important in marriage. It's because in marriage, this playful energy, it's so important, because if your relationship is all head-to-head communication, talking about schedules, tasks, and problems, and you don't have moments of heart-to-heart connection or belly-to-belly connection, the relationship can start to feel very heavy and dense. Playfulness lightens things up. It brings joy and laughter, which are essential for a happy and thriving marriage. And let me tell you, ladies, this can be one of our superpowers. So we can even bring playfulness into our relationships in a way that creates that connection and ease. So for example, there are things that I can say to my husband in a playful, joking tone that might trigger him if I actually set them in a serious tone. Belly to belly communication allows for that lighthearted approach to some sensitive topics. So you can actually do this over time. He's just gonna think, oh, she's being cute. But there is a fine line between playful and hurtful. Of course, this kind of communication needs to be used positively. We've all seen situations where someone tries to disguise a hurtful comment as a joke. So, for example, if you're at an event and a coworker makes a comment in front of your boss and it's an attempt to kind of embarrass you or damage your reputation, that's not a belly to belly connection. You might go up to them after and say, well, hey, what was that? And they might say, oh, that was just a joke. I was just joking around. But a real joke in this context would be lighthearted, and it wouldn't try to make anyone feel bad or kind of ruin their reputation. And they're going to have this, like I said before, kind of this foundation of all of these heart to heart connections and these belly to belly connections already. But if it's just like a coworker who like says that they're making a joke, but it's really an attempt to embarrass you, then that's not really a joke, and that's not a belly to belly connection. And if the intention behind it is to hurt someone else and not just be playful, then that's not a real joke. So it's always about the intention behind the joke. A joke only works when everyone involved is laughing and feels good about it. It has to be well received as well. So there has to be some kind of foundation of trust and connection in that relationship. So if your relationship has been in a rocky place, you'll need to be careful with this kind of joking. So let's say you just had an argument and haven't resolved it yet. Trying to joke around might not go very well. It might trigger the other person. So of course, again, this belly to belly communication works best when there's already a foundation of connection and mutual respect. So, you can still joke around, but keep it lighthearted and keep it playful. And of course, there's those type of relationships where they're able to roast each other. They're able to like have this belly to belly connection and no one's getting hurt, but you really have to have this strong foundation first. You have to build that trust and that mutual respect first. And studies, they actually show the role of playfulness in relationships. It strengthens the romantic and social bonds. It creates emotional intimacy, and it also reduces stress. So just remember, it has to be well received. So positive humor in relationships relies on emotional safety and trust. Without these, sometimes humor or roasting each other can be perceived as critical or undermining. And of course, everyone is going to be different. So just really learning your partner will help. And by understanding how and when to use belly to belly communication, we can just bring more joy and connection into our relationships. So now I want to talk about sexual communication. So sexual communication is a very delicate dance of mannerisms, words, energy, posture, eye movements, and eye contact. So it's more nuanced and non-verbal than the other types of communication that I've talked about. Sexual connection is about being flirty, sensual, and suggestive. If you're just dating, of course you want to use this sparingly while you're on a date and you're not married with someone or in a long-term relationship with them. So for example, you can use a little bit of that sexual energy in a dating situation, like holding eye contact and letting the guy see that you do have a sensual side to you, but without being overly sexual. It's about striking that balance, and you're not sending those wrong signals to them. You're not using it verbally or just using that take me to bed type of energy. And of course, if that's what you want to do and that's what you like to do, then of course that's totally fine. I'm not here to judge. But if you're here to find a healthy relationship, then I would say use it very sparingly. And this is very interesting too, because there's actually a study done that shows that if a man is sexually aroused, he is way more likely to misinterpret your signals. So let me break this down. If you are just smiling, being friendly, and in your heart-to-heart connection, a guy who isn't sexually aroused will likely just think you're being a nice and kind, friendly person. But if a guy is sexually aroused and you're still giving him that heart-to-heart connection, you're not giving any of your sexual energy, he's more likely to misinterpret it and think that you're sending him your sexual energy. So this is why I kind of want to add this in, and it's important to be mindful of how you communicate in dating situations. Now, in your marriage, I want you to bring this kind of energy into your relationship. This is going to be so important for your marriage. As women, we are the romance. We often think that men should romance us. But the truth is, we're the feminine and the feminine is the romance. When you fill yourself up with pleasure and truly romance your own life, you will naturally become the romance and it overflows from you. When you romance your own life, you're naturally creating this playfulness and this sensuality, and you and your partner can build that romantic and emotional intimacy in the marriage. So if you need to re-listen to the Art of Flirting module and do those modules and start adding that romance into your life. And remember, when you start doing this within your marriage or your relationship, it's not going to be easy at first sometimes. At least for me, it was really hard. So it felt very uncomfortable to do at first, but you have to kind of build the depth, and over time it just becomes easier and fun. Flirting isn't just for dating. It's going to be important in marriage and long-term relationships as well. Studies show that it enhances intimacy and keeps the spark alive in long-term relationships. And here is a little voice mastery trick that I want to share with you guys. So these are really fun and savage tricks that you can try in your relationship and just have fun with this. Practice this. This is going to be your homework, is practicing your voice mastery in these different communication planes. So now I want to talk about the subconscious communication. The subconscious communication is where things start to get interesting because you can use this in your favor, or it can be just a hot mess and we can use this negatively and accidentally trigger someone's subconscious and then start creating this argument or fight. So in the subconscious, the way that we're postured and how we use our words and our tone can trigger the other person's subconscious. Of course, I'm not saying it's your fault or anybody's fault, or that you always have to just walk on eggshells so that you don't trigger anyone. But just know that we can say something with good intention sometimes. And even if someone has a subconscious belief, like maybe they're believing that they're not a good parent, or they believe that they're very insecure and they're not beautiful enough, a simple comment can trigger their wounds to come up and cause them to get triggered. So in a romantic relationship, I believe it's crucial to start that pair bonding process and learn about each other's triggers. Like, what doesn't feel good? What triggers them? How was their childhood? Not to be his therapist or try to fix him, but just to be curious about each other, learning each other's triggers and attuning to those. So sometimes we feel like we have to pull this stuff out of men because many times they don't want to open up. They don't like to talk about their past. So over time, I had to learn my husband's mannerisms, when he shuts down, when he opens up, when things are easy to talk about, and what's more painful for him to talk about. This also allowed me to learn my own triggers and allowed him to learn mine as well. So then we learned to attune to each other so that we wouldn't accidentally trigger each other's nervous systems. And let me tell you, when we first moved in together, we triggered the heck out of each other constantly. It was a hot mess. Okay, let me tell you, it was hard. But I knew, okay, I need to work on these triggers because trust me, if I didn't, then if I got into another relationship, it would just be the same triggers over and over again, just with a different person. I would still have to work on it. So triggers, you still have to work on them. Even if you think like, oh my gosh, I got with the wrong person, he's triggering me, he's constantly pissing me off, this is not the right guy for me. Well, sometimes it is the right guy. He's bringing out those wounds in you that you need to heal. So you can trigger someone all day long, or you can soothe and reprogram them by healing your own triggers and soothe and reprogram your own nervous system with inner work. And there's a savage way of communicating with the subconscious mind that I want to teach you guys. Now, you can use this for bad or use this for good, but like I said, many women in here are using this all for good. You just want a really good relationship and you want to create this divine union. So you can use this in a savage way. So this is how the savage feminine comes into play. And I've used some of these subconscious triggers to my advantage, but not in a way that's negative towards my husband, in a way that helps our marriage. A very savage feminine subconscious communication is when you use, now I know this sounds very negative when I say that, but it's actually inspiring them to step up, be in their masculine leadership, and feel motivated to want to step up and naturally boost their testosterone. A man naturally boosts testosterone when he's in his masculine energy. So let me tell you a story. So there are always ways to use subconscious communication to your advantage, but it takes learning your partner. If it had been the beginning of our relationship, and I probably would have triggered him by saying, oh, well, I was a single mom. I figured it out all the time. I used to do this and blah, blah, blah. But over time, I've learned that this type of communication isn't about comparing or criticizing. It's just about inspiring and motivating them to step up into their masculine. So you don't want to do it in a way where you're comparing your man and then he's losing in the relationship. You want to make him feel like he's winning and he's able to do it. So this skill also helps in the other relationship, like with your kids. A big part of pair bonding with people closest to you is being attuned to their energy and their triggers. And this is such a feminine trait, because I can see the smallest shifts in my daughter's energy or my husband's energy that might not be even noticed by someone else. A lot of times my husband might not even notice those small shifts in my daughter's energy. This is such a feminine thing. And the subconscious mind, so that resides on the right side of the brain. And that's your right, so not the other person's right. So this part of the communication happens beneath the surface. It's where energy, tone, and unspoken cues are being processed. So think of the subconscious mind as a quiet observer that picks up on things that you might not consciously notice, like a shift in body language or the feeling that something is off. And it's not only a feminine trait, so the masculine does pick up on these traits as well. So they can pick up on energy. They're really sensitive to energy, and they can notice small shifts when something's off with us. So we can really do this for each other. I've become very attuned to my family, where I know when small shifts happen, when something is wrong. And my husband has become attuned to us, where he'll notice those small shifts in our energy without us even trying to say anything. So now I want to get into the last portion of this module, and I want to talk about the gut level emotional response. So this is where the communication becomes a feminine art. And when I say art, I mean being able to combine these different types of communication in a way that feels very harmonious and natural, in a way that you get his gut level response. So I want to give you an example. So let's say that you need to tell your husband about your schedule, which is more of a mental to mental, practical, householding type of conversation. So you could say something like, I'm busy until 7 p.m. That's how we normally would say it. And sure, that gets the point across. But it's only a head-to-head communication when you're just saying, I'm just busy until this time. This is when I'm available. So there's no playfulness, there's no warmth, there's no connection in that moment. So instead, you can add a little bit of feminine energy to it, and you could lower your tone, add a little bit of sexual energy, soften your posture, and then use a playful, slightly flirty tone. And you can say something like, wow, I'm busy right now, but you never know what can happen after 7 p.m. So what did I just do? I still communicated my availability, But I added a touch of heart to heart and belly to belly connection, and even a tint of that sexual energy. So this type of communication, it invites curiosity, connection, and that lightness. And if you want to, instead, you can also share a joke or a playful comment to create more of that belly to belly connection. So whatever your vibe is. So this point is to use communication in an artful way, combining these elements to soothe the nervous system and strengthen your bond. So there's a reason why this type of communication really works. In neuroscience shows that the tone, body, the language, emotional context, they play a significant role in how our messages are received. So in neuroscience, only 7% of communication is verbal, which is the words that we use. The other 93% comes from the tone of voice. 38% of that is the body language, and 55% of that is by intentionally shifting your tone, posture, and your energy. We can create a deeper connection that's felt at a gut level, not just processed mentally. And honestly, I wouldn't ever teach any of this in a public setting. So I would never teach this just on like a social media for free, because I know that there can be women out there who would hear this information and say something like, oh, well, why is it my job to soothe his nervous system? And yes, sure, you can take that approach. You can say that he's a grown man and he can manage his own triggers. But think about this. Why do we expect our partners to provide for us, want to make us happy, or do things that bring us joy? We can even say the same thing. Why does he have to manage my triggers? So it's not about competition. It's just about collaboration. For me, I want a divine union where my marriage feels just delicious and romantic. I can't constantly trigger my husband, and I don't want to, whether it's over small things or big things. Instead, I choose to use this artful feminine communication skills to enhance our relationship. So this isn't about me doing all the work. Over time, we've created what's called a couple bubble. So this is the concept in a relationship in therapy where both partners work together to protect their connection. So my husband knows my triggers and he makes sure to not intentionally push them, and I do the same for him. We attune to each other. And of course, we're human. There's gonna be moments where the hormones are high or one of us is hangry, and we might not communicate as artfully. We might trigger each other, but because we trust each other, we give one another the benefit of the doubt. We know that no one's perfect and we trigger each other sometimes, and it's gonna happen here and there. It's a part of life, and what matters is that to keep growing and improving over time. And of course, all the time, if any triggers happen, it's always going to be a reflection. So there's always a beautiful lesson out of it. And when I use this feminine communication to soothe my husband's nervous system, it's not about control. It's just about inspiring connection, motivation, and he even does the same for me. It reinforces the safety and the intimacy in our relationship, and it creates that spark within our relationship. So this is why I believe in combining head to head, heart to heart, belly to belly, sexual communication. It's about creating a relationship where both partners feel seen, heard, and supported. So yes, it takes practice, but over time, these small changes lead to more harmonious and deeply connection partnership. And it starts to build this couple bubble where both people feel secure in your relationship. It's a way to prioritize each other's emotional well-being, and we reduce that conflict and build trust. So I have some fun homework for you guys. Like I said before, I want you to practice the voice mastery and have fun with it. Have fun practicing using your sexual communication. Have fun having the heart-to-heart communication. And it also keeps your energy kind of light and playful. Like when I'm practicing this, I kind of like laugh to myself. I think it's kind of funny. So then my energy is kind of like lighthearted and playful. So it's a really fun thing to do. So that's going to be your homework number 1, is to practice that. And then homework number 2 is I want you to recognize these 5 points in your relationship, these 5 points of communication within your relationship. So start by asking yourself, okay, what plane am I on right now? What communication style are we having right now in this moment? Is it head to head, heart to heart, belly to belly? And I want you to be more aware of these different communications within your relationship, and then practice combining these. Use this as art. Have fun with this and play with it. So combine different things like heart to heart and belly to belly, or if you're having a mental to mental conversation, then add a little bit of heart to heart, a little bit of sexual energy. So play around with it and have art with it. All right, ladies, I hope you guys all have an amazing weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.